to be here with you all, and thank you, Larry. So I want to talk about Buster Keaton, a little bit about him growing up and setting first onto the set there with Fatty Arbuckle. He was born October 4th, 1895 in Pickaway, Kansas. His mother, Myra, gave birth to him while they were performing with a traveling medicine show. And he soon got the name of Buster when he fell down a flight of stairs, and he did not cry, didn't get hurt. And the story is that Harry Houdini, upon witnessing this, told his father, Joe, well, your son really took a Buster. And Joe said, well, that's a good name for him. So from then on, that was his name of Buster. He grew up on the vaudeville stage. He officially became a part of the act between 3 and 4 years old, but he was wandering onto the stage and waiting in the wings long before that. The act of the Three Keatons was known on the circuit as one of the roughest acts in vaudeville. And little Buster was nicknamed the Human Mop because his act consisted of his father Joe throwing him across the stage or into the backdrop or out into the audience. Later, when his brother Harry, nicknamed Jingles, and his sister Louise came into the act, they were billed as the Five Keatons. A 1907 review of the act states that the Three Keatons, with Jingles, the 3-year-old, and Louise, aged 6 months, were brought in for the finale. They were good in a certain knockabout way, and it is marvelous that Buster has any bones left unbroken. The Keatons were known all over the country for their knockabout act, and if you saw them on the bill, then you knew that you were in for quite a show. But it was Buster that the critics singled out time and again. And again, they would write about him in 1905 when he was 10. The Dramatic News wrote the following review. Joe and Myra Keaton act as a backdrop to their little godsend in the literal sense of the word. For Buster Keaton certainly is the breadwinner of the family. From 1914, the Syracuse Herald wrote, for the Three Keatons, I feel an almost family interest. I have seen them off and on for several years. Buster is grown up now, or pretty nearly, but his mother and father do not look a day older. Mrs. Keaton, the reverse of anything, as she comes out in her natty scarlet suit and plays the saxophone. How the Keatons ever managed to raise that boy, I am sure I do not know. Beating a boy up and slinging him that way around Joe Keaton does twice daily would not be my method of raising unless I wanted to plant the boy and raise him like a string bean. But Buster enjoys it and gets his share back at the old man, and the unique knockabout fun of the Keaton family is just as funny as ever. So now we'll jump ahead to 1917. This was the year that was full of new beginnings for Buster Keaton. The Keatons were booked to perform at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles that February. The week before, they were in San Francisco, and Buster's father, Joe, was starting to drink more heavily. They were performing 3 shows a day with a rough and tumble act, and Joe was getting older, and the physical strain was starting to catch up with him. So he turned to drink more and more during this time. Buster and his mother, Myra, had just had enough. It was while they were in San Francisco that Buster told his mother that I'm going to break up the act. February came, and they both agreed it was time to call it quits. So while Joe was off drinking, Buster and his mother left, taking a train east without even telling Joe their plans. Buster left his mother in Detroit with some friends, and he headed to New York City to see if he could get work on his own as a single act. He must have been apprehensive and excited because he'd never really performed on his own before. Well, while he was in New York City, he went to the office of his agent, and Buster explained that he broke up the act and he was wanting to go out on his own. So his agent said that he could get Buster all the work he wanted. He arranged to get Buster in the stage production of The Passing Show of 1917 that was set to open at the Winter Garden Theater. So Buster and his agent walked down to the street to the office of J.J. Schubert. And he introduced Buster to Schubert and said, J.J., put Buster here in your new show. Well, Schubert looked at Buster and he asked him only one question: "Can you sing?" Buster said, "Sure, I can sing." And he was signed up for the show on the spot. The passing show of 1917 was a big production of its day. It played the Winter Garden for 6 months and then was taken on the road for about a year and a half. When they signed Buster for the show, his salary was $250 a week and $300 a week on the road, which was very good money for 1917. We really don't know what role Buster would have played in this production. We can assume that Buster would do some of the routines that he was known for in vaudeville. But as for singing, we're not sure how that would have fit in. The production would have had various acts along with a bevy of pretty chorus girls. The reviews later for the passing show were very good. Life magazine would review it, and they would say that the passing show of 1917 is a great big evening's entertainment, and the entertainment is a perfectly safe place for anyone to take his Methodist aunt from the country, or to say nothing of his best girl in the city. But fate had other plans for our Buster. He had 10 days to enjoy the sights of New York before rehearsals began for the show. So as he was walking down Broadway one day, he happened to run into an old vaudeville friend, Lou Anger. Anger told Buster he was on his way to Norma Talmadge's studio and would Buster like to come along with him. Well, at first Buster kind of hesitated, but then he decided to go, and that was a decision that changed his life forever. And as they walked to the studio, Anger told Buster how he was now manager for Joe Skank's Film Enterprises. So he asked Buster, "Have you ever been in movies?" And no, Buster said, his father got mad at them, and William Randolph Hearst had once approached Joe Keaton about putting the Keatons in movies, but Joe just would have no part of it. Joe Keaton thought movies were just a passing fad and, frankly, beneath the dignity of the vaudeville performer. But Buster did enjoy watching movies while they performed in vaudeville. As motion picture popularity grew, films were added along with the vaudeville shows in the theaters. And Buster would later say that he was impressed with such films as Tilly's Punctured Romance, The Birth of a Nation, and Intolerance. So as Buster and Anger walked to the Colony studio, it was humming with activity. On the first floor was Norma Talmadge's making a film, and the next floor was her sister Constance in her film production. And Buster would later recall it was wonderful to him. It was like being in a great entertainment factory. This is a picture of that same studio, and they actually have demolished that in New York City, so it's no longer standing. When they got to the third floor, which housed Roscoe Arbuckle and his film crew, they were in the middle of making a comedy short called The Butcher Boy. Now, Buster had met Arbuckle before socially. Arbuckle was only 5 years older than Buster, and they had both been born in in Kansas, not far from Pickaway. And after Keaton and Arbuckle talked a short while, Roscoe asked Buster if he would like to shoot a scene with him. Well, at first, Buster turned him down. So Roscoe offered to give him a tour of the set, and he asked Buster, "What do you want to see first?" Well, without hesitation, Buster said, "The camera," because he loved anything like that. Buster all but climbed inside of it. He had to know how it worked. He wanted to know how the lighting worked, what went on in the cutting room, how did the projector work. Then that was the magical moment for Buster. It all came together for him. The ties of the theater were just stripped away because it didn't matter to Keaton any longer. He had now discovered that the movies and how they were made were something that he wanted to be a part of. Here was a new way to capture, one time on film, what had taken him years on stage to perform to audiences by traveling all over the country. He planned on a 20-minute tour of the set. It lasted over an hour. He turned to Arbuckle and said, "Let's do that scene." So one scene turned into 4 and then 5, and it was midnight before they called it a day. Arbuckle said to Buster, "Will I see you in the morning?" "Oh gosh," Buster said, I'm getting ready to start rehearsals soon." So the next morning, he rushed down to his agent's office before it even had opened and waited for it to open, and he explained to his agent that the grand time he had had with Arbuckle. And he said, I want to stay in motion pictures. So his agent tore the theater contract in two, and he asked Buster, well, how much are they paying you to make pictures? Buster didn't even realize that he never even asked about the salary. He said it would not be until a week later that he found out that he was making $40 a week. Well, when he told his mother what happened, she advised him she would break the news to his father. Joe would later say, our Buster in motion pictures, I can hardly believe it. It did not matter to Buster that his father was not excited for him. He had discovered that what he was now doing was his true passion. He was with others who loved making movies as much as he did. They were free to try new things and to experiment in this new medium of silent films. Rudy Blesch's book on Keaton would title this chapter in Buster's life as The Magic Silence. So as I close my portion of this program, I want to share with you a copy of the page from a date book that Buster kept. And he actually kept date books from the time he was a little boy, like 13 years old. He wrote something every day in these books. On March 21st, 1917, he wrote, First Picture, The Butcher Boy. This was a young man that was certain this was not his only picture. It was only his first of more to come. And I marvel at how brave and confident this young man was. That day in March 1917 was the day that changed Buster Keaton's life and the history of motion pictures. March 1917, truly the beginning of the magic silence. Thank you.